The bridge of the Terran flagship Indomitable hummed with quiet activity. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the massive viewing screen, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched Earth rotate slowly below them. The blue marble that had birthed humanity looked peaceful from this distance, but Chen knew that peace was about to end. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission," called out Lieutenant Morrison from the communication station. His young face was pale with worry. "It's coming from outside the galaxy," Chen nodded grimly. They had been expecting this for weeks. Human scouts had reported strange ships gathering at the galaxy's edge, ships that belonged to no known species. Now it seemed their owners were ready to make contact. "Put it through," Chen ordered. Full display. The viewing screen flickered and changed. Earth vanished, replaced by an alien figure that made several bridge officers gasp. The creature was massive, easily 3 meters tall with 6 powerful arms ending in clawed hands. Its skin was a deep purple color with silver markings that seemed to shift and move. 4 eyes, each the size of a human fist, stared out from its elongated head with cold intelligence. "I am Emperor Vexthul of the hegemony of Zephyria," the alien spoke, its voice deep and commanding. Strange technology translated its words into perfect English. "I address the primitive species that calls itself human." Chen felt her jaw tighten, but she remained silent. Around the bridge, her crew watched with growing anger as the alien continued. "For 12,000 years, my empire has brought order to this galaxy. We have civilized countless worlds and guided lesser species toward their proper place in the cosmic order. Now we turn our attention to you." The Emperor's 4 eyes seemed to look directly at Chen through the screen. "You humans have spread beyond your birth world like a disease. You build crude machines and call it progress. You fight among yourselves and call it strength. This ends now." Behind the Emperor, the view shifted to show a vast fleet of alien ships. They were unlike anything humans had ever built, looking more grown than constructed. The vessels curved and twisted like living things, their surfaces pulsing with bioluminescent lights. There were hundreds of them, each one larger than Earth's biggest space station. "I offer you this single chance for survival," Vexthul continued. "Abandon all human colonies beyond your solar system. Return to your birth world and accept our rule. You have 72 of your hours to comply." The alien leaned forward, its massive form filling the screen. "If you refuse, we will demonstrate why no species has ever successfully resisted the hegemony. Your cities will burn. Your ships will be destroyed. Your people will serve us as slaves or they will die." Chen had heard enough. She stepped forward, her boots clicking on the metal deck. "Computer, open a return channel." "Admiral, are you sure?" Morrison asked nervously. "Maybe we should contact Earth Command first." "No," Chen replied firmly. "This thing wants an answer. It can have one now." The communication link opened. Chen could see her own image appearing on screens throughout the alien fleet. "Good. Let them all hear this." "Your Majesty," Chen said, her voice calm and steady. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Navy. I've listened to your little speech and I have to say I'm impressed." Several of her bridge officers looked surprised. The alien emperor seemed pleased by what he thought was submission. "You've conquered thousands of worlds," Chen continued. "You've built an empire that spans the galaxy. You have weapons and technology that make our best efforts look like stone tools. That's quite an achievement." Vexthul straightened, clearly expecting formal surrender. Chen's expression hardened. "But here's the thing, Your Majesty. You seem to have us confused with someone who gives a damn." The bridge fell silent. Even the constant hum of the ship's engines seemed to quiet. On the screen, the alien emperor's 4 eyes widened in shock. "Let me explain something about humans," Chen said, taking another step toward the screen. "We're the species that looked at the deepest ocean and decided to go swimming. We're the ones who saw the highest mountain and decided to climb it. When our world tried to kill us with ice ages and volcanoes and plagues, we didn't just survive. We thrived." The Admiral's voice grew stronger. "You want to know what makes humans different from all those other species you've conquered? We don't know when to quit. We don't know when something is impossible. And we sure as hell don't know when we're beaten." Behind Vexthul, Chen could see other aliens moving frantically, clearly disturbed by this unexpected response. They had probably never heard defiance from a species facing extinction. "You have 72 hours to reconsider," Chen continued. "Not us. You. Because once you cross into human space, once you threaten human worlds, there's no going back. We might not win, but I guarantee you this. We'll make sure you regret ever hearing the word human." The Emperor's purple skin darkened with rage. You dare threaten the hegemony? You pathetic creatures with your metal ships and chemical weapons. We have conquered civilizations that could destroy your entire species with a thought. Chen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Maybe, but those civilizations knew when they were beaten. We don't. She paused, letting that sink in. 72 hours, Your Majesty. Use them wisely. She gestured to Morrison, who cut the transmission. The alien fleet vanished from the screen, replaced once again by the peaceful view of Earth. The bridge remained silent for several long seconds. Finally, Lieutenant Morrison spoke up. Admiral, did we just declare war on a galactic empire? Chen walked back to her command chair and sat down heavily. No, Lieutenant. They declared war on us. We just let them know we got the message. But, Admiral, said Commander Rodriguez, the ship's tactical officer, their fleet is enormous. Our scouts estimate at least 10,000 ships, maybe more. Each one outguns our best battleships. I know the numbers, Commander, Chen replied. But numbers aren't everything. Send a message to all human colonies and military installations. Code Red. Full mobilization. What's the plan, Admiral? Asked Morrison. Chen stared at the screen, her mind already working through possibilities. The plan, Lieutenant, is to remind the galaxy why humanity has never been conquered. Not by ice ages, not by volcanic winters, not by world wars, and not by some six-armed bully with delusions of grandeur. She stood up and walked to the tactical display, where a three-dimensional map of human space flickered to life. Dozens of star systems glowed with the soft blue light that marked human colonies. They expect us to run, Chen said quietly. They expect us to hide behind our defenses and wait for them to come. That's what every other species has done. She turned to face her officers, and they saw something in her eyes that made them stand straighter. But we're not every other species. The Admiral touched a control and the display changed. Now it showed not just human colonies, but the infrastructure connecting them. Trade routes, communication relays, mining stations, research facilities. Hundreds of installations scattered throughout human space. Send another message, Chen ordered. Priority Alpha. All civilian personnel are to evacuate to Earth immediately. All military and essential personnel are to implement Protocol 7. Commander Rodriguez's eyes widened. Protocol 7? Admiral, that's never been tested on this scale. Then I guess we're about to find out if it works, Chen replied grimly. As her crew rushed to carry out her orders, Admiral Sarah Chen stood alone at the viewing screen, watching Earth turn slowly in space. In 72 hours, the most powerful military force in galactic history would arrive, expecting to find frightened humans cowering behind their defenses. Instead, they were going to find out why humanity's unofficial motto was, "Hold my beer and watch this." The galaxy was about to learn that threatening humans was easy. Surviving their response was another matter entirely. Fleet Commander Thysa Ara floated in the biogel command chamber of his flagship, the Living Death. Through the organic walls of his ship, he could sense the thoughts and emotions of his massive fleet. 10,000 vessels strong, the hegemony's grand fleet had never known defeat. Today would be no different. Report, he commanded, his mental voice reaching every ship captain simultaneously through their psychic link. The responses came back in a flood of shared consciousness. Scout ships reported the same thing from system after system. Human colonies stood empty and dark. No defensive fleets waited to challenge them. No desperate evacuation ships fled toward the inner worlds. It appears the humans have accepted the inevitable, reported Sub-Commander Zethic from the forward scouts. All outer colonies show no life signs. They have retreated to their core worlds to await our arrival. Thaisara should have felt pleased, but something bothered him. In 12,000 years of conquest, the hegemony had learned to recognize the signs of a species preparing for surrender. Usually there were frantic communications between worlds, civilian ships fleeing in panic, hasty defensive preparations. The humans showed none of these signs. Continue advance, he ordered. All ships maintain battle formation. These creatures may be more cunning than they appear. The Grand Fleet moved deeper into human space like a living tide of destruction. Each ship pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that marked their mood. Confident, hungry, ready for battle. They had fought energy-based civilizations. Species that could manipulate matter with their minds. Races that built machines the size of moons. Humans, with their crude metal ships and chemical propulsion, should be laughably easy to defeat. The fleet reached the Proxima Centauri system, humanity's first interstellar colony. Long-range sensors showed the orbital habitats exactly where intelligence reports had placed them, but they registered no power signatures, no heat, no signs of life. "Deploy investigation teams," Thaisara commanded. "I want to know why they abandoned everything so completely." Biopods launched from several ships carrying teams of hegemony soldiers toward the human installations. These warriors had been bred for conquest, their bodies modified for combat in any environment. They expected to find empty buildings and abandoned equipment. Instead, they found something else entirely. "Commander," came the report from the first boarding team. "These installations are not abandoned. They are changed." The psychic link carried images from the boarding party's minds. What had appeared to be simple orbital habitats from a distance revealed themselves to be something far more complex up close. The outer shells looked human, but underneath lay technology that hurt to look at. "Explain," Thaisara demanded. "The entire structure has been converted," the team leader reported. "What we thought were living quarters are actually weapon systems. The docking bays contain some kind of magnetic acceleration system. The power core has been replaced with something that reads as inert until you get close. Then the energy signatures are wrong." Thaisara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the biogel surrounding him. "Wrong how?" "Sir, I think this entire habitat is a weapon." Before Thaisara could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the fleet. Every sensor array had suddenly lit up with new contacts. The abandoned installations throughout the system were powering up simultaneously. What had looked like derelict mining platforms began to unfold like deadly flowers. Crude-looking communication relays revealed themselves to be sensor arrays of incredible sophistication. Even chunks of space debris that had been dismissed as junk began moving with purpose. Evasive maneuvers. Thaisara commanded, but it was too late. The first salvo came not from the installations they had been watching, but from asteroids they had ignored. Chunks of rock that registered as completely inert suddenly blazed to life, launching projectiles at velocities that shouldn't have been possible. The crushing wisdom, a heavy biocruiser, took a direct hit from something that sensors identified as a simple tungsten rod. The metal projectile, no larger than a human, punched completely through the ship's living hull and out the other side, leaving a perfectly round hole that immediately began trying to heal itself. But the healing stopped abruptly as the ship's biosystems died. Whatever the humans had done to that projectile, it carried something that killed the ship's organic components on contact. "Return fire," Thaisara ordered. "All ships target the weapon platforms." The hegemony's bioships responded with their standard weapons. Plasma bursts that could melt through any known armor, psionic disruptor beams that scrambled enemy targeting systems, and living missiles that could adapt to any defense. The plasma struck human installations and simply disappeared, absorbed by some kind of heat sink system that glowed red-hot but didn't fail. The psionic attacks found no electronic systems to disrupt. The humans seemed to be using purely mechanical targeting systems. The living missiles reached their targets and detonated, but the human platforms continued operating as if nothing had happened. "How are they still functional?" Subcommander Zethic demanded through the psychic link. The answer came from the second wave of human attacks. This time, the weapons platforms fired something different, clouds of what looked like metallic dust. Hegemony ships flew right through them, their biohulls easily filtering out what appeared to be harmless particles. Then the particles activated. Each speck of dust was actually a microscopic machine, smaller than anything the hegemony had ever seen. They burrowed into the bioship's living hulls and began reproducing, using the ship's own organic matter as raw material. Within minutes, entire sections of hegemony vessels were turning gray and lifeless as the nanomachines converted their structure into more of themselves. "What is this weapon?" Thaisara demanded of his science teams. "Unknown technology," came the panicked response. "The machines are too small for our biosystems to recognize as threats. By the time the immune responses activate, they have already established colonies." 3 more hegemony ships fell to the expanding clouds of nanomachines. Others began retreating, trying to stay clear of the deadly dust. But that only exposed them to the kinetic bombardment from the weapon platforms. Thaisara realized with growing horror that the humans hadn't simply prepared defenses. They had turned their entire colonial space into a trap. Every piece of infrastructure, every seemingly harmless installation, Every bit of space junk had been converted into part of a massive weapon system. All ships. Full retreat to jump distance, he commanded. We regroup and assess the situation. As the Grand Fleet pulled back, more human surprises revealed themselves. What had appeared to be simple cargo containers floating in space suddenly ignited their own engines and began pursuing the retreating ships. These containers moved faster than anything their size should have been able to. And when they caught up with hegemony vessels, they didn't explode. They attached. The first ship to be caught by a pursuing container found itself unable to jump to faster-than-light speeds. Something about the attached device interfered with their bioship's ability to fold space. The vessel was trapped and more containers were approaching. Leave them, Thisara ordered grimly when rescue ships requested permission to help. We cannot risk more ships. As the Grand Fleet finally reached minimum safe distance for a hyperspace jump, Thisara took stock of his losses. In less than 30 minutes of combat, he had lost 18 ships to weapons he didn't understand. Technologies that shouldn't exist and tactics that violated everything the hegemony knew about warfare. Compile a full report, he ordered his subordinates. Send it to the Emperor immediately. What should we tell him? Asked Sub-Commander Zethic. Thisara stared at the sensor readings that showed human installations still powering up throughout the system. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Every single piece of human infrastructure had been weaponized. Tell him, Thisara said slowly, that we are not fighting a primitive species. We are fighting something else entirely. The fleet commander accessed the communication array and began composing his message to Emperor Vexthul. How could he explain that humanity's apparent weakness had been an illusion? How could he describe weapons that used the enemy's own strength against them? The humans did not flee, he dictated. They prepared. Every colony, every station, every piece of debris has been converted into a weapon system. They do not fight as other species fight. They do not build defenses to protect themselves. They build weapons to destroy us. As the Grand Fleet jumped to hyperspace, retreating from human space for the first time in hegemony history, Thisara couldn't shake the feeling that they had just walked into the outer edge of something much larger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The humans hadn't shown fear when threatened with extinction. They had shown something far worse. They had shown preparation. And if this was just their outer defenses, what waited for the hegemony in the core human systems would be beyond anything they had ever faced. The galaxy's greatest military force had just learned that threatening humanity was easy. Surviving the encounter was another matter entirely. Admiral Sarah Chen studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The holographic map showed the Sol system bristling with defensive positions, but these weren't the kind of defenses the hegemony expected to find. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and filled with surprises. Every satellite had been upgraded with weapon systems. Even the space junk floating around Earth had been repurposed into something deadly. Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up the hegemony fleet, reported Lieutenant Morrison. They're back and they brought friends. The main screen lit up with sensor data. The alien fleet had tripled in size since their first encounter with humanity's outer defenses. Massive bioships stretched across space like a living constellation, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with anger and determination. How many? Chen asked. 30,000 ships, ma'am. Maybe more. They've got some kind of interference making exact counts difficult. Chen nodded calmly. Her staff looked nervous and she couldn't blame them. On paper, this was hopeless. Humanity's entire space fleet numbered less than 3,000 ships, and most of those were cargo haulers and civilian transports pressed into military service. Commander Rodriguez, status report on the defensive grid. The tactical officer consulted his displays. All kinetic platforms are operational. Railgun arrays are charged and ready. The asteroid belt has been fully converted. Every rock bigger than a house now has engines and targeting systems. Good. What about the special projects? Rodriguez grinned. The mass drivers are online. The gravity mines are positioned. And the surprise package is ready for deployment. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The surprise package had been her idea. Inspired by humanity's oldest military tradition, if you can't outfight the enemy, make sure you take as many of them with you as possible. Incoming transmission from the hegemony flagship, Morrison announced. Put it through. Fleet Commander Thisara appeared on the screen, floating in his biogel command chamber. The alien's purple skin showed patterns of red that Chen's intelligence briefings had taught her meant extreme aggression. Human Admiral, Thaisara spoke, his words translated by the same technology as before. You have cost the hegemony valuable ships and warriors. This was a mistake you will not survive to repeat. Commander, Chen replied politely, I have to say I'm impressed. Most species would have learned their lesson after the first beating we gave you. But here you are, back for more. The alien skin pattern shifted to deeper red. Your tricks will not work twice. We have adapted our tactics. Our ships now carry countermeasures for your primitive weapons. Primitive? Chen raised an eyebrow. That's interesting coming from someone whose ships are basically really big animals. Tell me, Commander, what's your top speed? Thaisara seemed confused by the question. Our bioships can achieve significant fractions of light speed in normal space. That's nice, Chen said conversationally. Our rocks can go faster. Before the alien could respond, Chen cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Commander Park, you may fire when ready. The first salvo came from the converted asteroids in the outer system. What had once been chunks of mining debris now blazed to life with fusion drives, accelerating to impossible speeds. But these weren't the tungsten rods the hegemony had faced before. These were something far more creative. Each rock was actually a carefully engineered projectile filled with thousands of smaller projectiles. When they reached optimal velocity, they split open like deadly flowers, spreading clouds of hypervelocity fragments across space. The hegemony's bioships, designed to regenerate from energy weapons, found themselves facing a wall of physical matter moving at 10% of light speed. The aliens' new countermeasures proved useless. They had developed shields to absorb kinetic energy, but the sheer volume of incoming projectiles overwhelmed any defensive system. Bioships that had survived the death of stars found themselves shredded by what amounted to very fast gravel. Second wave, launch, Chen ordered. This time the attack came from Earth's orbital platforms. These were the installations the hegemony had been watching, expecting them to fire conventional weapons. Instead, they launched something that made Thaisara's tactical officers panic with confusion. What are those objects? The alien commander demanded of his science teams. Unknown, sir. They appear to be containers of some kind, large ones. They're not accelerating toward us. They're just floating. Thaisara stared at the sensor readings. The humans had launched what appeared to be simple cargo pods into space. They weren't moving fast, they showed no weapon signatures, and they seemed to be completely harmless. That should have been his first warning. The containers drifted into the middle of the hegemony formation before anyone realized what they actually contained. When they opened, they didn't release weapons or explosives. They released something far more dangerous: construction equipment. Thousands of industrial robots spilled out of each container, designed for building space stations and mining facilities. But these robots had been reprogrammed with a single directive: build weapons platforms using whatever materials were available. The materials available happened to be the hegemony's own ships. The construction bots swarmed over the biovessels, their cutting tools and welding lasers making short work of organic hulls. Within minutes, they were building weapon systems directly onto the alien ships, turning the hegemony's own fleet against itself. Destroy those machines, Thaisara commanded. But his ship's weapons were designed to fight other starships, not tiny, fast-moving robots. The construction bots were too small and numerous to target effectively. Worse, they were learning. Each robot was connected to a shared network that allowed them to adapt their tactics in real time. As hegemony crews found ways to destroy some bots, the others modified their approach to avoid the same fate. Admiral, Commander Rodriguez reported with barely contained glee, the construction bots have successfully converted 12 enemy ships. The modified vessels are now targeting their own fleet. Chen watched as hegemony bioships fired on each other with weapons built from their own hulls. The elegant alien formations dissolved into chaos as ships tried to identify which vessels were still under friendly control. Commander Park, initiate Phase 3. The third wave of humanity's attack came from an unexpected source: the planet Mars. The red planet had been turned into the solar system's largest mass driver, its entire surface covered with magnetic acceleration coils. When it fired, it launched not projectiles but something far more disturbing. What are they sending now? Thaisara demanded. His science team studied the approaching objects with growing alarm. Sir, they appear to be human ships, but the designs are wrong. They're too small, too fast, and the power signatures don't match anything in our databases. The objects were indeed human ships, but not ones any alien intelligence could have predicted. They were fighter craft built using a simple philosophy. If you're going to die anyway, you might as well take the enemy with you. Each fighter was essentially a single-seat missile with a human pilot inside. They carried no defensive systems, no life support beyond a few hours of air, and no intention of returning home. They were built for one purpose: to get close enough to enemy ships to deliver their payload. The payload was uniquely human in its simplicity and terror, a nuclear warhead triggered by the pilot's heartbeat. If the heart stopped, the bomb exploded. Thaisara watched in horror as human fighters swarmed his fleet. They were too fast for his ship's targeting systems, too numerous to intercept them all, and too determined to be discouraged by losses. Each fighter that reached a bioship detonated, taking a vessel 10 times its size with it. "This is madness," he transmitted to his subordinates. No sane species would sacrifice their people like this. But the human pilots weren't being sacrificed. They were volunteering. Each fighter craft carried volunteers who had signed up specifically for this mission, knowing they wouldn't survive it. They flew directly into the hegemony formation, laughing and joking over open communication channels as if they were heading to a party instead of their deaths. "Hey, alien uglies," one pilot transmitted on all frequencies. "Welcome to Earth. Hope you like fireworks." The bioship Eternal Hunger disappeared in a nuclear fireball as the pilot's fighter struck its command center. "This is Skull Squadron Leader," another human voice called out cheerfully. "We've got presents for everyone." "No need to thank us, we're just glad you could make it to the party." Thaisara realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just fighting a war. They were enjoying it. Each attack came with laughter, jokes, and an enthusiasm that defied all logic. These creatures were facing annihilation, and they were having fun. "All ships retreat to hyperspace distance,"
he commanded desperately.
But even retreat proved difficult. The humans had thought of that too. Space around the Sol system had been seeded with gravity mines, devices that created artificial gravity wells when triggered. Ships trying to escape found themselves pulled back into normal space where human weapons waited for them. As the surviving hegemony vessels finally managed to jump to safety, Thaisara took stock of his losses. In 2 hours of combat, humanity had destroyed or captured nearly half of his expanded fleet using weapons that shouldn't have worked, tactics that made no sense, and a level of enthusiasm that bordered on insanity. "Prepare a message for the Emperor," he ordered wearily. "What should we tell him, sir?" Thaisara stared at the tactical display showing the Sol system. Even now, more human installations were powering up, revealing new weapon systems and defensive positions. How many surprises did these creatures have hidden throughout their space? "Tell him," the fleet commander said slowly, "that we are not fighting a military force. We are fighting a species that has weaponized their own insanity. They do not fear death. They celebrate it, and they have turned their entire civilization into a weapon pointed at anyone foolish enough to threaten them." As the hegemony fleet retreated for the second time, carrying news of humanity's impossible victory, Thaisara couldn't shake the feeling that Earth's defenders had been holding back. The humans had more surprises waiting, and he dreaded discovering what they might be. Emperor Vexthul stood in the war chamber of his mobile fortress, the final judgment. Around him, holographic displays showed the full might of the hegemony being assembled for the first time in over 1,000 years. This was no longer a simple conquest. This was a matter of imperial survival. "Report," he commanded, his 4 eyes burning with rage and humiliation. Supreme War Coordinator Kethvar, a massive creature with 8 legs and armor plating that had been grown rather than manufactured, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we have mobilized every available fleet. 200,000 ships now await your command. Ancient allies have answered the call, including the Void Hunters and the Mind Crushers." The Emperor nodded grimly. The Void Hunters were a species that could phase in and out of normal space at will, making them nearly impossible to target. The Mind Crushers could destroy enemy crews without touching their ships, leaving vessels intact for capture. Both races owed the hegemony ancient debts. "What of the experimental weapons?" Vexthul asked. "The planet killers have been awakened from their 1,000-year sleep. The reality warpers are charging their reality distortion fields, and the Time Weavers have agreed to assist, though they warn that altering temporal flow carries risks." Vexthul felt satisfaction flow through his massive form. No species had ever faced this level of concentrated force. The humans had won their first encounters through trickery and surprise, but raw power would crush their resistance. What intelligence do we have on their current preparations? HFY activated a tactical display showing human space. Our long-range scouts report massive construction activity throughout their territory. They appear to be building something, but our sensors cannot penetrate their new shielding technology. Shielding technology? The Emperor's voice carried dangerous interest. These primitives have developed new defensive systems? It appears so, Majesty. But there is something else. Our captured ships from the previous battles, the ones their construction robots modified, we have been studying them carefully. The war coordinator gestured, and the display changed to show the internal structure of a converted bioship. What they saw made several advisors recoil in horror. The human modifications made no sense by any logical standard. Weapons systems had been jury-rigged to work with organic components they were never designed to interface with. Power systems that should have exploded were somehow functioning perfectly. Targeting computers built from spare parts were outperforming military-grade hegemony equipment. How is this possible? Demanded Fleet Coordinator Nesathan. These modifications should not work. The principles they are based on violate fundamental laws of engineering. That, said a new voice, is because you are thinking like civilized beings. Everyone turned to see war philosopher Zendal approaching. The ancient creature was one of the oldest members of the hegemony, having served as strategic advisor for over 3,000 years. His species had achieved perfect logical thought through genetic modification, making emotion impossible and pure reason inevitable. Explain, Emperor Vexthul ordered. Zendal moved to the display, his mechanical appendages interfacing directly with the holographic controls. The humans do not build technology. They do not engineer solutions. They improvise. They adapt. They combine incompatible systems and somehow make them function through sheer bloody-minded determination. New images appeared showing captured human equipment, weapons made from industrial tools, armor plates welded from mining equipment, computers built from entertainment devices. Look at this targeting system, Zendal continued. It combines biological neural networks taken from their food animals, quantum processors stolen from their scientific equipment, and mechanical components that were originally designed for children's toys. By every law of physics and engineering, it should not function. But it does, HFY said quietly. It does, Zendal confirmed, and it functions better than our purpose-built military systems. This is not technology as we understand it. This is adaptation at a speed and effectiveness that should be impossible. Emperor Vexthul studied the displays with growing unease. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting, Your Majesty, that we are not fighting a technologically advanced species. We are fighting a species that has weaponized evolution itself. They do not plan for scenarios. They adapt to whatever they encounter in real time. The implications hung heavy in the war chamber. If the humans could adapt faster than the hegemony could plan, traditional military strategy might prove useless. It matters not, Vexthul declared finally. Adaptation has limits. We will overwhelm them with such force that adaptation becomes impossible. The massive hegemony fleet began moving toward human space 3 days later. 200,000 ships of every conceivable design, carrying weapons that had destroyed entire galactic sectors. Planet killers the size of moons, reality warpers that could restructure local spacetime, and temporal manipulation devices that could age enemy ships to dust in seconds. The first indication that something was wrong came when they reached the outer edge of human territory. Your Majesty, reported Scoutmaster Yithak, we are detecting anomalies. The forward screen showed space that looked normal at first glance, but as sensors probed deeper, disturbing details emerged. Asteroids hung in formations that seemed natural, but created perfect defensive positions. Space dust clouds moved in patterns that suggested artificial guidance. Even the background radiation showed signs of manipulation. They have fortified empty space itself, Yithak continued. Every cubic meter between here and Earth has been turned into a potential weapon emplacement. Impossible, declared Fleet Coordinator Nesathan. The resources required would exceed their entire industrial capacity. Unless, Zendal said quietly, they used our own resources to do it. The philosopher manipulated the tactical display, showing the wreckage from their previous encounters with humanity. Every ship we lost, every piece of equipment that was damaged or captured. Where is it? The question sent chills through the command staff. Hegemony bioships were designed to be recycled after death, their organic components breaking down into useful materials. But the human weapons had killed the ship's biological systems while leaving the mechanical components intact. They have been mining our wrecks, Kethvar breathed. They have been using our own technology against us. Not using it, Zendal corrected. Improving it. Every piece of hegemony technology they capture is disassembled, analyzed, and rebuilt according to human principles. They are not copying our designs. They are making them better. The truth hit the command staff like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been building defenses with human technology. They had been building defenses with improved hegemony technology, modified by a species that didn't understand the word impossible. All ships, maximum alert, Emperor Vexthul commanded. Deploy reality warpers to the front. Begin temporal distortion fields. If they want to play with modified technology, we will show them what original power looks like. The hegemony fleet advanced into human space like an unstoppable tide of destruction. Reality warpers began altering local space-time, making it impossible for enemy weapons to function normally. Temporal fields aged incoming projectiles to dust before they could strike. Mind crushers reached out with psionic power that could kill entire crews through sheer mental force. For the first few hours, it seemed to work. Human defensive positions fell silent as reality itself was restructured around them. The Emperor began to feel confident that raw power was indeed the answer to human adaptability. Then the humans adapted to that too. The first sign came when a reality warper suddenly exploded in a burst of twisted space-time. Sensors showed that something had overloaded its reality distortion field, but the weapon's signature was impossible to identify. Report, Vexthul demanded. Unknown, Your Majesty. Something interfered with the warper's field generators, causing a cascade failure. A second reality warper exploded, then a third. Whatever was destroying them was invisible to hegemony sensors and immune to their defensive measures. Your Majesty, Zendal said grimly, I believe the humans have developed countermeasures for reality manipulation. That is impossible. Reality manipulation is beyond the understanding of any primitive species. Yes, Your Majesty, but that has never stopped humans before. As more of the hegemony's most advanced weapons began failing, a transmission came through on all frequencies. The voice was unmistakably human, speaking with the same casual confidence that had marked all their previous communications. Attention, Hegemony Fleet, the voice said cheerfully. This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Federation. We noticed you brought some new toys this time. We like them. In fact, we've been making some improvements while you weren't looking. The tactical display lit up as hidden human installations throughout the system began revealing themselves. But these weren't the crude modifications they had shown before. These were weapons built from captured hegemony technology, improved beyond recognition. Planet killer beams designed to crack worlds were repurposed as point defense systems. Reality warpers that had once restructured space now powered defensive shields that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Temporal manipulation technology had been turned into weapons that aged only specific parts of enemy ships, leaving the crew compartments untouched, while reducing weapon systems to rust. How? Emperor Vexithul whispered. Simple, Admiral Chen's voice replied as if she had heard the question. You showed us what was possible. We just figured out how to make it better. After all, that's what humans do. We take whatever you've got and make it work the way it should have in the first place. The hegemony's unstoppable fleet found itself facing weapons built from their own technology, operated by a species that treated impossible as merely another engineering challenge to be solved. The greatest military force in galactic history was about to learn that humans didn't just adapt to their enemies. They adapted their enemies' weapons to fight against them. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Emperor Vexithul knelt in the ruins of his throne room on Zephyria Prime. The once magnificent capital of the hegemony bore the scars of human negotiations, not the devastation of conquest, but the organized chaos of construction crews hard at work. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before him, still wearing the same practical military uniform she had worn during their first communication. Around her, human engineers and alien workers labored side by side, rebuilding the imperial palace according to specifications that made no sense to traditional hegemony architects. Your Majesty, Chen said, offering her hand to help him stand. We need to talk. Vexthul accepted the assistance, his pride long since crushed by the impossible reality of his situation. The humans had done something no species in galactic history had accomplished. They had not only defeated the hegemony, they had done it so completely that resistance was no longer even theoretically possible. The war had lasted exactly 73 days. Not because the fighting stopped, but because there had been nothing left of the hegemony's military forces to fight with. 200,000 ships, the accumulated power of 12 millennia of conquest, had been systematically dismantled by human forces that never seemed to run out of new surprises. I don't understand, Vexthul said quietly. Your species barely had 3,000 ships. Your technology was primitive. Your worlds were defenseless. How did you not just defeat us but conquer our entire empire in less than 3 months? Chen walked to what had once been the Emperor's observation window. Outside, the capital city bustled with activity as humans and aliens worked together on construction projects that defied conventional engineering principles. Skyscrapers were being built using technology that combined hegemony bioengineering with human mechanical systems, creating structures that were somehow both living and artificial. We didn't conquer your empire, Your Majesty, she said. We fixed it. Fixed it? Chen turned back to face him. Do you know what humans learned during our early space exploration? We learned that everything breaks. Ships fail, life support systems malfunction, communication equipment dies at the worst possible moment. So we learned to fix things, not just repair them, make them better than they were originally. She gestured toward the window. Your empire was broken, Your Majesty. You had built a system that could only sustain itself through constant conquest and oppression. That's not engineering. That's a design flaw waiting to cause catastrophic failure. Vexthul followed her gaze to the city below. What he saw challenged everything he thought he understood about conquest and defeat. The humans weren't enslaving the population or strip mining the planet's resources. They were building infrastructure, establishing trade networks and setting up what appeared to be schools. I don't understand, he repeated. Your Majesty, Chen said patiently. When humans find something that's broken, we don't throw it away. We figure out how to make it work better. Your empire had 12,000 years of accumulated knowledge, technology, and cultural achievements. That's not something you destroy. That's something you repair and upgrade. A human technician approached carrying a data pad that showed construction progress throughout the former hegemony territories. Chen reviewed it briefly and nodded approval. Status report, Your Majesty, she said, turning back to Vexthul. In the past 6 months, we've established functional governments on 4,000 worlds, restored trade networks that had been disrupted by military conquest, and begun integrating hegemony biotechnology with human engineering principles. What do you mean by functional governments? Governments that actually serve their people instead of just extracting resources for the military. Governments that can adapt to local conditions instead of following rigid imperial mandates. Governments that don't need to conquer their neighbors to survive. Chen activated a wall display that showed a map of the galaxy. Instead of the rigid territorial boundaries of the old hegemony, the map showed a complex network of interconnected systems, each one contributing to a larger whole. We call it the Galactic Cooperative, Chen explained. Every member species maintains full autonomy over their internal affairs. But they also contribute to shared resources, defense, research, infrastructure development, and disaster response. And if they refuse to participate? Chen shrugged. Then they don't participate. Nobody's forcing anyone to join. But the benefits of membership are pretty obvious, so most worlds are signing up voluntarily. The display changed to show industrial output figures that made Vexthul's 4 eyes widen in shock. Production throughout the former hegemony territories had increased by over 300% in just 6 months. How is this possible? Simple, Chen replied. When people are working to improve their own lives instead of serving an empire that takes everything they produce, they work a lot harder. When they're free to innovate instead of following ancient traditions, they come up with better solutions. When they know their efforts will benefit their children instead of some distant emperor, they put their hearts into it. She walked to another section of the display. Plus, humans are really good at logistics. We've been dealing with supply chain problems since before we invented the wheel. Your empire was incredibly inefficient. Resources being transported across the galaxy when they could be produced locally. Military forces deployed in patterns that made no strategic sense. Entire worlds devoted to producing luxury items for the Imperial Court, while neighboring systems lacked basic necessities. So, you optimized our empire? We redesigned it from the ground up, Chen confirmed. Human engineering principles applied to galactic governance. Redundant systems so failure in one area doesn't crash the whole network. Modular design so individual systems can be upgraded without disrupting everything else. And most importantly, feedback mechanisms so problems get identified and fixed before they become catastrophic failures. Vexthal sat down heavily in what had once been his throne. The ornate bioengineered chair had been modified with human technology to include data terminals, communication systems, and what appeared to be a coffee maker. "What happens to me?" he asked. Chen pulled up another chair, a simple human design that looked completely out of place in the alien architecture. "That depends. Do you want a job?" "A job? Your Majesty. You spent 12,000 years learning how to manage a galactic empire. That's valuable experience. Yes, your methods needed improvement, but the basic administrative knowledge is still useful." She leaned forward. "The cooperative needs experienced administrators who understand large-scale governance. Obviously, the conquest and oppression approach is out, but the actual mechanics of coordination between thousands of different worlds, that's a skill set we can use. You want me to help you run the government that replaced my empire? I want you to help us run the government that your empire could have been if it had been designed properly from the beginning," Chen corrected. "Think of it as the ultimate engineering project, taking everything that was good about the hegemony and fixing everything that was broken." She stood up and walked back to the window. "Your Majesty, humans don't believe in throwing away things that can be repaired. That includes people. You made mistakes, big ones, but you also accumulated knowledge and experience that took millennia to develop. We'd rather put that expertise to good use than waste it." Outside the window, a group of human and alien children were playing in what had once been a military parade ground. They were using toys that combined hegemony biotechnology with human mechanical engineering. Living robots that could change shape and color, teaching them principles of both biological adaptation and mechanical problem-solving. "Besides," Chen added with a slight smile, "somebody needs to help us avoid making the same mistakes your empire made. Who better than someone who lived through the consequences?" Vexthal stared at the children playing below. For the first time in months, he felt something besides despair and confusion. It might have been hope. What would my role be in this? Cooperative? Advisor, coordinator, teacher? Chen turned back to face him. "Your choice. The cooperative doesn't conscript people into service. Everyone volunteers for positions they think they can handle. And if I refuse, then you refuse. We'll find someone else to do the job. There are plenty of former hegemony administrators who are interested in helping build something better than what they had before." Vexthal considered the offer. Outside, the sound of construction continued as humans and aliens worked together to build something that had never existed before. A galactic civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest, innovation instead of tradition, adaptation instead of rigid control. "Admiral Chen," he said finally, "I accept your offer. But I have one question." "What's that, Your Majesty?" "How did you know this would work? How did you know that offering partnership instead of demanding surrender would be more effective than the traditional approach?" Chen smiled. The same expression she had worn when first confronted with the hegemony's ultimatum months ago. "Your Majesty, humans learned a long time ago that you can't build anything worthwhile by tearing other things down. If you want something to last, you have to build it with the help of the people who are going to use it." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Besides, threatening a species that considers impossible to be just another engineering challenge was never going to end well for you. We don't conquer problems, we solve them. And a galaxy full of people who want to build something better together? That's not a problem at all. That's the best kind of solution there is." As Admiral Chen left to oversee the continued reconstruction of galactic civilization, Vexthal remained at the window, watching humans and aliens work together to build something that had never existed in 12,000 years of hegemony rule. A future that everyone could look forward to. The galaxy had learned that threatening humanity was dangerous, but it had also learned something more important. Working with humanity was the smartest decision any species could make.